Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Great to see so many people in the room here. It's actually almost a full house, very exciting. My name is Paul de Leeuw from Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen in Scotland, and I am your moderator for this third session this afternoon. And I see some people who have been here before, so great to have you back, but also welcome to those who are new to this session. Let me tell you what the plan is. We're going to talk about offshore wind specifically, business as unusual, and I know there's a lot of energy in the room about this subject because in the previous panels we already talked about it to quite a large extent. So we're going to build on this during this panel, but we're going to do a slightly different format to here before. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a presentation what's happening in the wind sector at the moment. It's moving at lightning pace. So actually, to get everybody on the same level of understanding, we're going to have Torf and Rijstad doing a presentation in a minute before we get the rest of the panel members here on the stage to answer some of your questions. So again, presentation first, then quick introduction to panel members. I'll start a Q&A, so that gives you 20-25 minutes to think about some fantastic questions. So please don't let me down. We'll come back to microphones in the room, and then we'll hopefully see where the session goes. This is your session, your questions, so let's make it as relevant as possible. If you want to publish anything, please use the hashtag OEEC23. Please do it out there, get it on social media, that would be fantastic. But also, if we can't address your questions in the session this afternoon, I look at my colleagues here, they will be available, yeah, the nodding, shaking head test, they will be available for a little bit afterwards so that you can follow us directly. If that works for everybody, first thing is context. Tora, can I welcome you to the stage to maybe set a context for the next 10 minutes? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the invitation to this to talk about this very exciting, growing area, offshore wind. Very, very exciting. But of course, also these days, there are quite a few challenges. So we also will touch a little bit upon them and share a little bit of some of the key market developments we see. So of course, some of the headlines that you've seen recently, of course, it creates some uncertainty to this growing business. That could maybe be a good thing to cool down the pressure in the industry. But of course, it also creates some uncertainty for investors and also developers to go forward in sanctioning new projects. When you see big companies like Siemens who needs financial support from their state, or you have big, strong companies like Ørsted also having to, redo their business case and their strategy to handle the challenges going forward. Just some examples. But this is something you see with most companies. They have to adjust these days because a lot of it is driven by inflation, increased cost in the materials that you use that goes into the industry. But I think a good reminder these days is that, we also talk about the energy trilemma. You talk about that things has to be affordable, has a decent cost. And sustainability and the green shift we see is very important. But I think a very, very important driver these days is energy security. We have wars going on, and of course the most important part in the energy space is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, of course, and trying to take Russia out of the market. But of course, energy security is a key thing. And what this figure is showing is that you can see all the orange bars on the left that goes to the left. Those are all the countries who needs to import energy. They import more energy than they produce. So it's only in Europe, it's only Norway and Russia, which is a net exporter of energy. And this is a very important key driver now, not only just securing energy, but also securing the raw materials and also the supplies going into this. And that is a big challenge. And in that discussion, you also, of course, have China, which is a key big element and a much maybe more important element in this discussion than Russia. But looking on the outlook, summing up all the projects we see in the funnel, you can see the installation in the bars, and that is going, a lot of installations going forward. And you can see on the right-hand scale, that's the cumulative installed offshore wind capacity, up to 126 gigawatt is what we see. But maybe some of this is at risk at the moment because of what we see of the challenges and the increased cost and lower margins in the industry. So a key thing, of course, will be how will this develop going forward. And we have some views on that. I don't know, maybe we can address it later in the discussion. But of course, we expect the cost to be quite high actually for quite a while, because the activity is going to be very high going forward if you want to meet the ambitions that has been set. And ambitions there are enough of, targets there are enough of. This is the targets to the right. You can see the bars. You can see the black part, which is not so big. That's the installed capacity. And the blue dots you see here is what we consider as what is in the funnel and where we think they are today. So still, there needs to be more projects to be filled up into the funnel to be able to deliver on the ambitions. That means government has to award more acreage, and probably also some of the terms needs to be better, at least at the current conditions. Otherwise, more projects will be delayed. And some of the we did a report at the end of last year together with Wind Europe organization. And some of the key challenges we saw end of last year, that was related to inflation and also higher interest rate. That issue has become more of a challenge over the last year. We also saw a lot of suppliers with low margins. Some suppliers, yes, that has become worse for some suppliers because they've entered into contract when material and, before the material cost, when that was lower. And then the input to all the fabrication has increased, the cost has increased, meaning lower margin. But some companies are also having some of the best years this year. So this differs again, depending on which segment you are within the offshore industry. Slow permitting is still an issue, according also to Wind Europe and all the members putting in inputs. And it's something that each country has to deal with. And also an issue last year was also that there was, different companies were so eager to get acreage, and they were outbidding each other and maybe also offering too good terms. That is maybe cooling down a little bit now, so maybe not such an issue these days. And then you had also the issue that you can see that you are building bigger and bigger windmills, bigger and bigger installations. And of course, that needs a lot of new equipment, bigger installation vessel, etc. And we saw there was quite a big gap last year, and we can still see that there is a gap here. Even though some big projects will be cancelled, it may ease it a little bit. But still, that is a thing. And of course, a discussion here is also how big windmills can you build, and how big should they be? And also part of this discussion is also the discussion about trying to standardize and industrialize the industry, because this is it's a new industry, and it's a growing industry, and it hasn't in a way settled yet. And then, of course, yes, governments are acting. You had the North Sea Energy Cooperation with the 10 countries. They came together last year. They are very supportive. They want to do the best they can to keep up the momentum and the pressure in the industry. And also they are supporting the new European Power Wind Action Plan, or Power Package, that was also released recently, which has a lot of different initiatives that we maybe can touch upon in the discussion. For example, on improved auction design or access to finance and permitting process, etc. So the EU system, or the Commission, is trying the best they can, of course, to keep the momentum up. And probably one good example actually of a government actually taking action is in the UK. I mean, the UK has been a frontrunner in development of offshore wind, and they still, I guess, are. Of course, they miscalculated in the last license round. They didn't get any applications. So, and some had warned about this because the terms were not good enough. But actually now they have turned around. They have improved the terms with, for offshore wind, for fixed installation, from 73 pounds per megawatt up to from 44 to 73 pounds. So it's probably, in a way that shows, if you really want to do things, you have to change the terms, and you have to adjust to the current climate and the cost levels, etc. Otherwise, you will just see more delays. So it will be interesting to see how other governments will react to this going forward. So exciting time, a lot of things happening, but some challenging currently that has to be solved. So yeah, by that I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Thor. Fantastic, thank you. Can I ask other panelists to join as well, please? That's fantastic. Brilliant, grab a seat. So everybody gets seated. Again, if there's people standing, there can still some seats in the front if you need them. What we're going to do is going to ask each of the panelists, you already met Tora, but the other panelists just to quickly introduce themselves. The bios are on the website, please read them, but as I said, hopefully we'll give a quick introduction. After the introduction, I'm maybe going to ask a little bit about some of the reflections from your presentation, Tora, some really interesting stuff in there. But let's start first, Renske, maybe just introduction from yourself first.
Yes. For me, it's not very easy to hear,
No.
Paul.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hopefully better.
Yeah, I can hear you on the stage. I hope it's okay for the room, but here we are, much better. Yes, thank you so much, Tora, for your excellent presentation, and Paul for hosting us in the group. I'm Renske Ietsma. I'm from RWE, one of the biggest power companies and the largest electricity producer of the Netherlands, and they're responsible for the offshore wind development in continental Europe. So that means from the Netherlands, everything down south. So I also really like that it's an international conference and that we have a very international audience and speak a bit more than just the Dutch market, although that has great potential at the moment. And in terms of reflections, what I like to say, I'm still super optimistic. I think this market, we talk a lot about the challenges at the moment, but what we have in front of us, it's just an enormous opportunity. You see all the targets there in the Netherlands going to 21 gigawatts by somewhere around 2030. I did notice the big discrepancy for the Netherlands about what we have pledged and what will actually be announced. But if you look around Europe, all the NSEC countries, but also in the south, there's just enormous growth predicted in this market. And then from fixed bottom, then there's also still the opportunity to move to floating wind, where 80% of the world's potential, we believe, also lays. And then when we achieve all those targets, to also convert that into hydrogen. So as RWE, we are super positive, and we think that that's a great market with a lot of opportunities, and I'm sure that we will talk a lot about the challenges as well, because we do see those for sure. So what we do specifically, and then maybe to end afterwards, I will briefly mention those challenges, but we clearly invest in technology supporting the green energy transition. Our strategy is also called Growing Green, and it's actually a coincidence that today is our Capital Markets Day, so I had to make sure that I announce here the right targets that we even have. But the good thing is that our targets only increased from what we had so far. So we will, until the end of the decade, still invest 55 billion in those technologies for Growing Green, moving to a capacity of 65 gigawatt of those technologies by 2030. And for offshore wind specifically, 35% of those investments will go into offshore wind. So even though there are challenges in the market, we're very committed to that. We believe we can reach a portfolio of 10 gigawatt. We have projects under construction, like Sophia and Tor, but then also a very strong secured pipeline here in the Netherlands, including the offshore wind farm of Oranje Wind. So that's our new name for the Hollandse Kust West system integration side, and very committed to develop further on that, to go through this strong portfolio. And it's not only about the Netherlands, it's a lion's share will go into Europe, but it's a worldwide investment. So we clearly have good opportunities also in the US. It has its struggles. I'm sure some of the colleagues will talk about that, but we do see that there is also still growth possible, and we're also active in Asia in that sense. So in general, I would say clearly still really good opportunities. Let's just start by delivering that. Let's just start by delivering the first roadmap that we have until 2030, a clear call to the industry for speed. Also to policymakers and all that, but also as an industry to look at ourselves and to say, what did we achieve? We achieved a great market here with subsidy-free tenders secured. Yes, it's different. Costs have increased, inflation is there, and interest rates are not the same as they were before, but we can deliver. So let's all look at each other as the industry, and if maybe politics doesn't go the way we had expected or is not as supportive as we were before, let's make sure that we deliver as an industry, that we keep our levelized cost of energy as low as possible, even if it's maybe a little bit higher than some predictions had said, but really go for it. I believe we can deliver it all together.
Brilliant. So you're an optimist by the sounds of it.
I
cheery.
cut you off that
Pretty cheery.
question
Well
already.
done. Arno, what's your view? From you?
I'm Arno Weijers. I'm a renewable explorer at TotalEnergies. It's maybe a bit mysterious title, but as you know, we have a past of exploration of oil and gas. And my job is to explore for renewable energy, large-scale renewable energy in the Netherlands. TotalEnergies is a multi-energy company. We changed our logo and our name last year with all the colors. So you know our activity in oil and gas, but we have high ambitions on renewables, 100 gigawatts by 2030 to place us in the top 5 worldwide, wind, solar. Basically, I'm also optimistic. I think it's very good to see all the high ambitions of the governments. I think there has been a lot of focus on the upstream, on the production side, and there has to be focus on the rest. I mean, we're building a new system here, a renewable system, so there is the grid, which needs attention, and there is the demand, which needs attention. If we want good business cases for our projects, we need to have good plans also for the electrification of a country like the Netherlands, which has a lot of gas use, historically needs to do a lot of electrification. We don't have a clear view on how that's going to work. So yeah, basically that's it. So we have these renewable targets. We call it integrated power because, as you know, we also have refineries. We intend to have renewable power, but also have a position in hydrogen, in synthetic fuels, etc. So that's our business ambition. And yes, I'm also optimistic. We have a pipeline of 16 gigawatts worldwide, offshore wind. And currently in operation, all renewables together, we have 19 gigawatts.
Brilliant, thank you. So coming from one energy company to another, Frank, from BP perspective.
Well, yes, hello, I'm Frank. I joined BP just short of 1 month ago, but no worries. I got properly prepped by my colleagues on the messages. Before I joined BP, I was in solar. I have to confess, I was out of the offshore wind for a few years. But 16 years ago, I was involved already in offshore wind in the Netherlands. So I have a little bit of a look-back view, also a view being out of offshore wind for a number of years and coming back in. And I sense and I hear a little bit of nervousness in the conference, in the room, in the messaging, that I think is not necessary at all. We are facing a little bit of headwind at the moment. Well, usually we like headwind for the wind turbines. So there's, yes, there are concerns. There are always concerns and challenges. For BP, it means that we are going to change. You know us as BP, as the integrated oil company, and we are in a strong transition to becoming an integrated energy company. So we are good in the molecules, we're good at gas, we're good at hydrogen. We are learning quickly on wind. We have a pipeline now of just, well, almost 10 gigawatt worldwide. So wind is becoming a sector at a scale and a size that's very interesting also for BP. Then if you look at the challenges from our point of view, it's not the wind, the offshore wind itself. Of course we face some challenges, but we will get over it. The main challenge will now be with all that offshore wind, all those electrons being produced offshore, how do we integrate them in the system in a proper way? Yes, there's a challenge with wind. There's a challenge with TenneT, getting the electrons to shore, or the other grid connections. But then, what do we do with the electrons? Is it electrons to electrons? Is it electrons to molecules? I think that's the big challenge now for offshore wind for the next, the near future. And those other concerns we can handle. If I look back when I was at university, I remember we had a discussion with wind specialists about wind turbines. And at that time, the discussion was, will there ever be a 1 megawatt wind turbine? And I can tell you it was 50-50 people who did believe or did not believe. And look where we are now. So those technical challenges, I'm an optimist, we can face. Economically, it's a matter of organizing it together.
Brilliant. Thank you, Frank. It's amazing how far we have come. Ruben, from another developer's perspective.
Yes. Great to be here this afternoon and introduce myself as head of the Benelux within Ørsted. I'm sure you guys know Ørsted as a market leader. Unfortunately, we're also part of the news articles that you put on the board. You were nice enough not to include our name, but I'm sure you found the relevant article. And so we've been hit by the underlying problems we see in today's market with higher supply chain costs, higher inflation, etc. And I think that in itself that shows where this industry is. The days where cost price reductions were the norm, we seem to have hit the bottom and see cost price of offshore wind going up. But it also means that I think next to the red flags that you showed, which are mainly on the supply side, what some of my colleagues here on the panel also showed is that the policy on creating the demand specifically for green electrons, green hydrogen, is what we need to drive this transition. To believe that these massive targets in offshore wind will be real and will materialize, we need to make sure that we synchronize offshore wind supply with demand from decarbonization in industry. And my plea is that it is not going fast enough and that we seem to lack the political drive to focus on that. Every time these ministers of the North Sea countries meet, the targets on offshore wind increase, but the policies to drive the demand for that product are not on the board. So that needs to change.
Brilliant. So you heard from analyst perspective, you heard from 4 developers. Between you actually have some serious gigawatts, I have to say, in terms of capacity. I want to get a flavor around, when I look at your slide, there's actually 5 or 6 countries who do most of the wind in Europe, right? And I want to get a flavor from the audience here. How confident are you that we're going to meet these wind targets what Tor showed you? How confident by 2030 we're going to meet our wind targets for Europe? Put your hands up, who's confident? 1. Tor, are you confident? Oh no. Oh, this is interesting. The panel members confident? Okay.
It depends if you really look at the absolute numbers that have been announced or if you believe that there will be a large delivery.
Who is thinking, no hope? We're not going to ever remotely get there. Can you put your hands up? No hope? Any no hopers in the room? Okay. Wow. Any on the panel? Oh, interesting. I'll come back to that. Who thinks it's going to be a bit of luck, a bit of here, we're going to find a way through it? Is there the rest? Okay, interesting. Wow. Right. Tor. What's your view? This is interesting.
I'm optimistic, but my view probably is that maybe things will take a little bit longer time. But with the ambitions, we have the plans, we have the money, people to do it. But it may take a little bit longer time, and then I think things will maybe happen even quicker than what we think today. But in the shorter term, maybe the targets are a little bit ambitious, which is very healthy, very good to have a stretch.
So Renske, you must have happy DNA because you are optimistic and quite supportive. Why?
No, you ask a very specific question, and I'm an engineer, so then I'm very specific. I will say, if we look at the targets for 2030, I think Tor's slides showed it all. We have to deliver something, but that doesn't mean that there is not still a very impressive growth to go on. I think we need to go on that journey. I think we should have the 2050 goal ahead and really work towards those targets, and then we will get there. But therefore, also my pledge before, let's make sure, maybe we've done a lot of talking, and I think the NSEC was amazing when it started. It came for many parties even surprised how good those few countries would get together. Now we see 10 countries there. There is so much potential in that. So we see the long-term view is there, the pledges are there, and now it's about delivering. And that's why I say now it's about the sector really going there, making sure we deliver it, making sure that we show that we are the most cost-efficient, fully green, fully decentral technology that is available, because then we can talk about those demand side and integration side of challenges. But first we need to make sure we deliver that, and that I think we can do.
So Ruben, I'm going to go next, right? So when I look at the slides we've seen, there's literally 5, 6 countries going to make a difference, right? If these countries start to compete and they kind of mess around the supply chain, we're not going to get there in Northwest Europe. What do you think needs to happen to get the supply chain right, to get the ecosystem right, that these countries succeed to get the wins for Europe in the future?
So there's a number of things. So I think we can do things within the industry and just talk about, for example, good thing last week Monday was in making a tender planning. So rather than competing for 2030 as it is a magic target, let's face and provide clarity to the supply chain, who builds when, what, will help. The other talk of the town is, of course, standardization. Where fixing a sort of a platform for offshore wind allows the supply chain to build the vessels and the foundation capabilities to match with that. And the other thing, as I said very, very clearly, we need to synchronize demand and offshore wind build out. And if we don't do that, the system somehow will fail. And that third part is something that I feel we as an industry don't talk about enough yet. And it takes political leadership. So if you zoom into the Netherlands, it's questions around, do we want Yara and OCI to remain in the Netherlands, who were here because there was cheap gas? Tata, as an example, is there a logical place for that industry within the Netherlands? Do we want it? And if so, what may it cost to make the transition for these companies? And it takes political leadership. And in the last election process in the Netherlands, we've seen no one talking about that. And that's important, that we see that political leadership to say who's here to stay and who, apparently not. Because if we know for what demand we need to fix the offshore wind capacity, we're shooting in the dark, which is very dangerous as a developer.
Any other views on that one?
Well, I'd like to respond to this one. I partly agree with you, Ruben, partly not. When it comes to this view on a more structured approach in Europe about the tender planning, I fully support, because by not doing so, we create a restriction for the sector. And restrictions cost money, so that's not helping. On the other hand, you mentioned about standardization, I think you mentioned standardized turbines, standardized turbine height. I really doubt if that's the message at this moment. I do understand the logic behind it. However, I think the market can find that standard without creating the restriction from a political point of view, from the government side. The market can find that standard. At some point, it will top out. That's clear. We have seen that in any other industry as well. And at some point, maybe these discussions are the start of this happening, the topping out of the size of the wind turbines. But I would say, well, let the market decide on that and not put a rule in yet.
I got a question on inflation, right? And you showed some pretty scary numbers to kind of wake us up post-lunch, right? Inflation is endemic. You saw the UK rising the strike price for CFD. Doesn't actually really, well, we end up as customers ending pay for more our electricity, right? Because it's not that you get more money or the supply chain get more money, it's just a matter of inflation going in. Is that a kind of thing we see now in the market? To make it work, we just increase the strike price and we still have the same margins for the supply chain, still margins for the investors. I don't know, anyone from your TotalEnergies perspective, is this kind of, is this helping, or we just basically just put inflation into the system and that's it, and the customer pays more?
I think the situation with inflation, the biggest problem is it was not programmed in the software before. I mean, we came from a very long period with no inflation, and all of a sudden there was this crisis. And I think, a lot of tenders were planned before and had to be delivered after. That's really a situation that led to a lot of tensions and project cancellations. Now I think installation is a bit more included as a parameter, but of course uncertainty is still there, so it can be a problem. But overall, this economic context, inflation, higher interest rates, we believe we are very strong financially, and we can manage the type of situation. Yeah, so that's our point of view.
Tor, what's your view? I mean, you presented it. I mean, I find this inflation number scary. I see what in the CFD in the UK, I find that scary, right? You go up so much, 60%, 65% increase in strike price. I mean, that's mad, right? We are consumers, we end up paying for it, right? Is that realistic?
Yeah, I guess maybe. I think in the way we see it, we do a lot of cost work, inflation work, and also cost estimating for all these different materials and things going into the construction. And we think it will ease off a little bit for the coming years. But of course, if you're going to have all this activity and all the plan followed and try to meet the ambitions that are there, the activity level will be very high. So then the cost will actually not ease that much. But of course, again, if the prices are too high, the terms are there, the market will cool itself down a little bit. But so it will probably a little bit of a cyclical kind of business, which you can look back on look on the oil and gas industry, which is very cyclical. But I think you will see some of the same thing here. So the market will probably adjust and help to ease the pressure on on all the ingredients and the materials needed. But we don't see a big fall in the cost going forward.
So we just build more cost structure in it, really in the.
So there will be the way it looks like there will be a high demand for offshore wind construction. There's a lot of activity going on in the hydrogen space. Yeah.
We heard this morning, and we heard it again in your slide, Laura, around consenting and time. This issue seems never to go away. Renske, how do we get around this? How do we fix the consenting and timing, getting into the grid and all that? Is there any magical thing we can do to kind of halve the time, go faster, go smarter?
Yeah. Well, in this aspect, I did actually want to also, for the question on inflation, give a compliment to the Netherlands and also to developments that are in Belgium, for instance, all that. Well, actually, there is a very clear roadmap from the government. You really know when things are going to happen. And actually, the time between a tender award and the actual delivery is relatively short because the government does all that work for you. And basically, when you win a tender, you have a ready-to-build site where you can go on. There's still a lot of development work you then have to do on your own contracting strategy, but in principle, you have that risk taken away from you. And that is very different than in many other countries. And when I look, for instance, at France, Arnaud will probably know much better than I do, but the tenders that we are bidding in now, they are going to be constructed 2030, 2031, or even later in that side. And then you have all those risks still on your side, still have to work on the consenting, you have to bid for a price now. So therefore, the first thing you need is really to have some type of indexation, some type of protection, at least from inflation. But on the other hand, so much can happen in that time. You have to, at this moment, predict how big the turbine is going to be at that moment in time. So in that sense, we're clearly in favor for a system like the Dutch system that is predictable and has a time between tender and delivery as short as possible.
But this is weird, right? We have willing investors sitting here. We have a willing market who wants to change. Why is this not happening? What gets in the way? Is it governments? Is it politics? Is it not in my backyard? What gets in the way? Everybody wants to make this happen. Frank, what's getting in the way?
Well, what's getting in the way? Of course, inflation hits all of us, but that's independent where we are. It hits all of us. When it comes to speeding up and the consenting, as just described about the Dutch system, it is quite good. It is quite rapid. So you can say, let's leave it like that. All do the same, and that's the best way forward. But still, there's an optimization possible. For example, at the moment, each individual independent developer has to do their own ecological program up front. So what do? We all run to the same institutes. We all do the same exercise. We all pay the money for it, and at the end, only the winner reaps the benefit from that effort. So I think with more, well, let's call it socialized efforts on the work that has to be done anyway, and that is not discriminating in the tender, then I think we can make more progress. Also dissipate the knowledge among the wider team for everyone. So I think that's an addition even to the Dutch system that can help speed up offshore wind. And then we talk about the Netherlands because we're in Amsterdam today, but this applies not just to the Netherlands, but also on the European level.
So I'm a slightly cynic, okay, so be ready for it, right? We have a COVID crisis, and we get a vaccine within 12 to 18 months and do it, right? So there's a crisis, we can react. Ruben, in this case, we have a climate crisis where it takes years to consent, years to do something. How do we unlock that? Is it a political issue? Is it an industry issue? Because you're ready to invest. Tor says the market needs it. Supply chain wants it. Activity is there. What is it? What gets in the way?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm on board with the framing, because I think we could be proud of what we have achieved in offshore wind. Things are going very, very fast in a way. Take the Netherlands as an example. We're building out up to 21 gigawatts in the next 7 years. That's massive. So I don't think that's the problem. So the problem I'm seeing is that if we push 21 gigawatts into a system that only needs 21 gigawatts on peak moments, we create a problem. My point is that if that happens, we may see this reality not being realized. So rather than focusing on could we accelerate the permitting, blah, 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 I think that the Netherlands has a great setup. We see massive volumes being brought to tender in Germany and in Denmark, 9 gigawatts for a country that doesn't need it. So again, we need to talk about the backbone and bringing that to German off-takers, for example. But massive numbers. But the question is, how do you link supply to demand? In the Danish case, how do you link the countries? And in the Netherlands also, the push for the decarbonization of industries.
Brilliant, fantastic. I'm going to go out to the audience. This is a business as unusual session, so give me your unusual questions, please. Any questions in the room? The microphone is coming, so just I'm looking for your name and a short question. Lady here in the middle, please.
My name is Tatjana Sederina and I come from Norway. The company is called Viascan and we work with digitalized, fabulous cable monitoring on live cables. But it may be then my opinion and not coincide with the opinion of my colleagues, so it will be my personal one. We are talking a lot about green transition, offshore energy. I have 25 years in the energy business. Nuclear, I started to work with renewables before it became fashionable, and I gave 20 years to oil and gas. We have been through a lot of fabulous peaks when everything should have been subsea, then everything should have been floating, whether it was feasible or not, whether it was reasonable or not. We all from oil and gas know the projects that have been very much politically driven. I understand that some of this energy transition today is also politically driven and should be because of the situation of the world. But generally speaking, while we build something new, I feel that we neglect and destroy what we already have, even if we remove the reasonable energy mix issue and just take offshore wind as exists today. A lot of assets, we work with a lot of assets that are quite young, 5, 7, 8 years in operation, with cables that are supposed to live 35, 25 years, but they fail during the first year of operation. Why don't we go into a little bit different approach while developing something new, actually trying to get more from what we have today? So that's exactly what Rensky was talking about, and it was fabulous to hear that from you in your position. Making things efficient and making sure that they work. Because this first project, it's not that they were bad. It was just the beginning of that. That was the translation. It was enormous, fabulous project with a lot of learning for the whole industry. This learning is very much hidden because nobody wants to hear about the problems, but that's where we learn. That's what becomes these projects that are new and huge and big. We are talking about this huge
Can I just make sure I get a question in there? So the question is new or existing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean this, the balance. The balance between this new and the existing. Why not pay attention to what we already have?
Let me pull it to the panel. Thank you. Pick it up. So, new versus existing. It came up in the Innovation Center session. It come up here. Rensky, you want to start?
Yes, I can. I think it's an excellent point, and it's also really a point for saying, so I'm with Ruben that what is happening is already great, but making that actually happen, it is also a challenge, as you correctly say, because at the moment we simply do not have enough turbine manufacturing, we have to double monopile production, we need twice as much vessels at least. And making all that happen, you have to make sure that you also look at what you have and make that perform great. And there we do have two ways to go. And we have a big discussion about should we standardize, especially here in the Netherlands. It's a very active discussion, I must say. Sometimes it's less active still on the European or worldwide level. And I would say at least we need to make sure it goes that way. But we really have two flavors there. And we can again look at policymakers and, to create standards for us and tell us what we're supposed to do. Or we can look at the market. I'm not saying which one is right or which one is wrong, but I'm saying that at the moment we live in a reality where we are fully looking at the market to solve things for us. And then I would say, as suppliers, show that you have learned from those early designs and that they are improved and that they are better. Show that a turbine that is already existing for a number of years will perform better, will have less serial failures, will have a higher availability, and probably also a more reasonable price over time. And then your developer will be very happy to buy those, to have it faster, the vessels will be available, we will know what we are installing. And I think then you will really go in a direction of this mass delivery process and get really this industry out there on the North Sea.
Any other people want to comment on that one? New versus existing?
On standardization, I agree with those point of views that it has to come at some point. I question whether it's the governments who have to regulate that. I think it happened in the aviation industry with the A380. I think the sector will come with it, and that's up to the sector too. But I don't think it should come from the government.
Okay. Anybody else? Ruben?
I think there are a couple of examples where it is actually happening. For example, Dutch government introduced the option to push out your permit, the existing permit, to 40 years. So that's on top of the 20 or 25 years that they were originally issued. You could extend it to 40. That's reusing existing equipment, basically. But also what's happening on the hydrogen backbone, it's basically converting existing pipeline to now hydrogen and filling in the missing pieces. But there are examples where it is actually happening, that we reuse existing infrastructure.
I mean, I think you make a great point, because utilization, normally isn't particularly high on wind farms, so actually using more of the existing is probably not a bad idea. I want more questions in there. Anybody else? Ooh, what's happening on this side? This side better get ready soon. There's one here, and then we have a gentleman in the back.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Wilson from Vanameda Marine. Where we sit in your supply chain is that we do the project cargo piece. So when you start moving components around, we're the people that look after that bit, the bit that gets damaged, all of that. So obviously we're overjoyed that all this activity is going to happen. It came up this morning very briefly, but we didn't really get into it. I wonder what the panel's view is of whether or not there's the capital capacity in the insurance markets to underwrite these projects, given how much is going to be required and how much underwriting is going to be needed to secure them.
Very interesting question. Insurance, who wants to go there?
I do want to go there.
Frank.
Though I have to make up my mind while talking. It's an interesting question because this also relates to standardization, as you say. So standardization decreases risk, lower insurance costs. So fully support of that. I think part of the way forward as it's going now is projects are becoming also bigger. And bigger for an insurer could be a bigger risk, but it's repeating projects. It's large repeating projects, so we do many times the same thing. And that takes out part of the risk as well. So this aspect of scale, I think, can help answering your concern. The first one is a risk, the second one less, but the last one you know what you're doing. Now the business is really project by project. With the projects becoming bigger, it becomes more like scale, it becomes more like a flow. And then that should be part of the answer to your question.
Any other people want to chip in? No? Okay. There's another question here. I think the gentleman just back there. Can we get the microphone there, please?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Gerard Weins. I'm a foundation installation manager. So my question is, the whole panel, we are talking about delivery. But what are we delivering? We're delivering from the offshore to the station onshore. But for example, everybody's talking about the Dutch government. Why we are not able to connect the power which we create offshore into the grid of the Netherlands? Is this something that people like RWA or BP also look into it? Because I know it's TenneT who should do it, but listening to this, it's only the benefit for the developers, but nothing for the end consumer.
Okay, so I hear offshore grid versus onshore grid, right? This is a very Netherlands-focused conversation, so who is best positioned to start as well? Arno, you want to go? And then
yeah, if you want so. Yeah, there are a lot of tensions on the grid, that for sure, especially in the Netherlands onshore, for the development, that's because of the development of solar, especially in the Netherlands. And that's the point I was making in the beginning, is there needs to be a holistic view on the new energy system we're building, not only with focus on the upstream production side, but on the whole, everything that needs to happen. There are tensions in the Netherlands for those connections with offshore wind, but as far as I know for now, it has been going well. There needs to be more and more planning to get that right, but of course it's an important point, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wenske and Tor, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was smiling when I heard you say there's a lot of tension on the grid, and I was happy that there is actually, in that sense, but that was the first thing that came to mind. But I think your question is spot on, and it has to do, again, with integration. We are creating something that wasn't there before, and creating something which, for that reason, needs to be insured and needs to have an offtake and all that together. And the first thing, and I think that we're on a good route, is to simply, okay, we build a bigger grid, also offshore, and we bring that to shore. Also there, we need a continuous conversation, and here it is actually, in principle, very good as a developer that TenneT takes that part and delivers you really a plugin. But there's a continuous dialogue required on where the risks go in that section, when it will be available, and if you have a very short planning, which there is at the moment, only a few months actually to deliver a 2 gigawatt wind farm after they have installed the grid, that's not going to work, and then there's actually a lot of risk that you're taking as a developer to deliver that. Nevertheless, I do acknowledge that there's a lot of socializing of those costs, and that's a huge investment a society is making in building that, and therefore I think as a developer we also have a responsibility to look at alternatives, to look at an optimized system onshore, but also to look directly offshore, what alternatives are there, and then looking at hybrid projects, making sure that we have connections directly to other countries, I think is fundamental. Will be tricky if all markets around us have a CFD system, and here there's a fully merchant system with even a financial component based to it. But from a system point of view, we think that that's exactly the way to go. And in addition to that, if you do say that at a certain point in time there is a surplus of electrons, then go to molecules. And if you want to go to molecules, then go directly offshore to molecules. Try it out, see what is there again. Can you use existing pipelines? And try to produce, where possible, the hydrogen directly there and ship it to where it needs to go, or put it in a pipeline where it's to go. Because you are fully right, in the end, that's a cost for all of us, and we need to make sure we don't just build, but do it as efficiently as possible also there.
Brilliant. Tor, you had a few observations as well?
No, I guess a comment is that this is not just a problem in the Netherlands. I mean, this is a big thing also in Europe. And I mean, the European Commission, they have issued different reports and strategies on this and how to try to solve this issue. It's, of course, on a country level, it's on a regional level within a country, but it's also how you transmit the electricity between the different countries. And also even in Norway, where we have all this hydropower and energy, there is also a big challenge actually on lack of infrastructure to send the power in different directions depending on the supply and demand. And it seems like some, why is it like this? And probably the reason it is like this is that it's been pretty, relatively stable, the electrification kind of development and network. But now with all this renewable wave coming, it's coming so quickly that the kind of it's the governments or the bureaucrats and the companies looking after this. They have not been able to keep up to speed. And they really have to change, and they are trying to change now. But this is a big challenge in entire Europe, not just in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Maybe I can add to this. And in fact, it's a response to the question about the distribution grid congestion, as well as reusing part of the existing what we have at the moment. With offshore wind, we are not directly on the distribution grid, so we are at the transmission grid. So wherever we can make use of that at the transmission grid level in the harbor, directly onshore, or even better offshore, creating those molecules, that's a good idea, and then reusing the existing infrastructure for gas. I think that's a good idea. But there's another vision, and I know it will take some time, it will take a long time because of legislation, but at the European scale, if we create these interconnectors, and we create interconnectors between the wind farms, making use of the grid connection that exists from two sides, and you use a small cable. So from a technological point of view, it simply makes sense. From a legislation point of view and a commercial point of view, it does require a lot of work to make that happen. But that's also making better use of what's already existing, but also flattening out the use, the supply and demand. So in the end, helping the different systems in the different countries. We have to look at it at the European scale.
Brilliant. We've got some time for some more questions. This side has done really well. You haven't done very well. Any questions on this side? Yeah, well done, well done. Thank you. We get a microphone here, please. There's people smiling at the back. I'll come to you next.
Hello. I work at the Port of Rotterdam Authority in the Port Development Department. And if everything gets bigger, also the demand for space will increase. And we already find difficulties in finding the right space. So we get the advice to incorporate adaptive port planning, and I'm wondering how the panel thinks about adaptive port planning as a whole.
Fantastic. How do we plan for ports, capacity,
Sounds
things
like
we do?
synchronization, so I'm all for it. Yeah.
Ah.
So indeed, looking at one side of the equation doesn't work. The grid mentioned is a key component, but indeed space, electrolyzers take up a lot of space as an example, and so a bit of coordination between all of that is definitely helpful. So
can I check before we go? Is there a problem? Because the microphone is coming. Is there a problem, or is this a nice to have?
In terms of the competition for space, I think there will be a problem because we run out of space in a port area, or maybe in a small country like Holland. There's nowhere to go at one point.
So we've got 4 developers here. When we run out of space, we run out of capacity to do something. I don't know if it's true or not true, but any views on that one?
Yes, I actually think that there were also very good panels here today talking about those specific issues. So I hope you saw those as well, or maybe you were even part of it at some point, because it is essential, as you say, port planning, finding the area to be available for every phase of our value chain is essential. You always think about where's the operational base and where will you be for 35 or hopefully 40 years, but actually the clear bottleneck at the moment is often where can you do your logistics, where can you do your marshalling, etc. And in that sense, coordinate between the ports of the Netherlands, but also go between countries and have this European roadmap. I think also there, the NSEC countries really said, we need to coordinate because that can happen. The Eemshaven is actually more likely to be a harbor that is being used for some of the projects in our neighboring countries than it is for the Netherlands. Similar that we will have in the south if you look at developments there. So it's an essential point, and a very strong collaboration with all the ports in the country is there, therefore for us as a developer of the highest priority. The last thing I would say in terms of the space, if we talk about electrolyzers, also there we'd say let's at least make sure we test and we demonstrate what we can do in terms of electrolyzers at sea. Because again, building expensive cables, waiting for that to be all brought back to land, and then find out that we're using valuable space to make an electrolysis capacity onshore would be simply a waste.
Brilliant. We have time for one more question before I start a quick fire round. Better be a really good question. No pressure.
Hi, Erik Warmerdam, Boskalis. How does the panel see the risk for the current fleet of installation vessels? Because it's already very constrained, especially with the increase in pile sizes and weight.
Okay, so the question around installation vessels, panel size, weight, what can we do? Have we got the capacity, capability to do so? Tor, start with you first.
No, I think if we look on our prognosis going out in time, yeah, there is a lack of, still a lack of vessels, yeah? So you need to build more. So unless you get a big, downturn in new sanctioning, but with the expected funnel we see, yes, you need more vessels to handle also the bigger pieces.
Maybe a quick one. No, but for me, it all comes back, all those questions, to the holistic view we need. We're building a whole new energy system. It's one of the main challenges of humanity since a long time ago. And we need to take care of all the aspects, the ports, the supply chain, the electricity demand, and not just put 70 gigawatt on the paper. That's going to produce almost 300 terawatt hours, and today it's 120 terawatt hours, the consumption in the Netherlands. How are we going to, what are the power prices going to be, what part is going to be hydrogen? It's a holistic thing. In Netherlands, there's an initiative called Nationaal Plan Energie Systeem, which is a first start for this holistic approach, which is very good.
Brilliant. We're running out of time. I'm going to do a quick fire round. So, you're going to get 10 seconds to answer the question. This morning we had a bit of a challenge around the length of 10 seconds, so we put a clock in front of you, so this time there's no excuse. So I want to get it really short and snappy. I want people to leave this room happy. Okay, so that is your mission if you dare to accept it. Ruben, I'm going to start with you, just ready. We're going to promote all of you to run the EU. And you can do one thing to make wind better. What would you do? 10 seconds, Ruben.
Create the demand.
Create demand. Frank.
System integration.
System integration. Arno.
Holistic approach.
Holistic approach. Renske.
Keep your promises.
Keep your promises, Tor.
Oh, I think it's also to support demand side and maybe do some subsidies at the right time, at the right places, to keep up the building up the kind of capacity levels.
Fantastic.
I'm happy the analyst is saying that and not the developer.
Yeah, that's fine. 2024 around the corner. If you can ask one thing of the supply chain, all supply chain companies in the room here, what would you ask? The one thing, 10 seconds. Renske.
Yeah, I would say have the confidence and please build those vessels, or explain to the politicians what's hindering, so we make that happen together.
Frank.
The curve is really high. People tend not to believe. If you even believe only half of it, it's still great.
Ruben?
Stay committed. Stay committed.
Okay. I know.
Trust us. We're here for the long term.
Okay. Tor, where you come from?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of opportunities. You just have to, get up every day and try to solve the challenge you see. And the future is there.
Okay, my last question. When I asked the audience, how hopeful are you that we're going to deliver the targets? There was what I call a slightly mixed response. How do you cheer them up and saying, guys, we're going to get there? What's the message you want to leave people with? Tor, what are you going to leave us? They're going to go this way around. What's the message you're saying is we're going to meet these targets because?
I think it's, if you reach the target, it's good. You may over-deliver, as I indicated, even maybe, but a little bit later. And even if you don't reach the target, this is going to be a big business and very interesting times going forward.
Big business, set. Remember the 10-second clock? Renske?
I would say it is not new. We're already on the course, and we've already shown that this is really the most cost-efficient, clean technology that we have. So we can do it, but we need all of us there.
So we can do it. It's the Nike advert. I love it. Right.
Yeah, it's normal that there are ups and downs. We're writing one of the most exciting chapters in history, so be confident.
Okay, Frank?
Well, we will create a fully sustainable system, and we will do it in a fully sustainable way, and in a way that at the end the levelized cost of energy is lowest of all, so we will make everyone happy.
Ruben, you got the last word.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Well, that sounds like a very good politician. Hold on. I'm going to close in a minute. First of all, big thank you to you for being here, for your questions, for your enthusiasm, for the smiley faces. It's always very helpful. Lots more action. Please go to the stage where there's a lot of other things taking place. There are a couple of more sessions tomorrow, so please, I hopefully see some of you back. Also a session this afternoon. So please use the most of the conference, speak to people, speak to the panel members. But most and foremost, can I thank our panel members for a fantastic answers and a fantastic enthusiasm and contribution. Please join me.